I found my dad's wallet stashed in my best friend's bag. And when I asked her why, her voice was shaking. She said, "I don't know how it got there." But the way she couldn't meet my eyes told me everything. I used to think friendship was the one thing in life you could trust without question. Until that afternoon inside at Riverside High, I would have sworn Sophie Torres was my sister. We'd been best friends since freshman year, two broke kids from the Upper East Side who didn't quite fit in with everyone else. At Riverside, most kids wore designer shoes and carried iced lattes to class like it was a status symbol. Sophie and I, we split a muffin at Chelsea Market on Fridays and called it a treat day. She was the loud one, always laughing, always pulling me into trouble I secretly liked. And me, I was the quieter one, the kind who kept sketchbooks full of faces I'd never show anyone. But somehow she got me. She always did. She was the first person to know when my parents separated, the first to notice when I was wearing the same jeans 3 days in a row because laundry money was tight, and the only person who could make me forget that sometimes I felt like a visitor in my own city. My dad, he's the kind of man who works too hard for too little. He runs deliveries for a catering company downtown. Up before sunrise, home after dark, smelling like coffee and stress. He's proud, though. Even when the bills stacked up, he never asked anyone for help. That pride, it's what kept us standing. I remember the day Sophie first came over to our apartment. It wasn't fancy, just 2 small bedrooms and a kitchen that hummed when the lights were on. But she walked in like it was a penthouse. "Your dad's the sweetest," she said that night as he brought us grilled cheese sandwiches cut into triangles. "He's trying," I laughed. She smiled. "He's winning." That's how close we were. Sophie wasn't just my best friend. She was part of my family. We did everything together. Walks through Riverside Park after exams, late-night talks on her fire escape, eating pizza straight from the box. We'd plan college together, joke about sharing a dorm. But that kind of comfort makes you blind sometimes. You stop questioning things. You stop seeing the small cracks, the ones that start as whispers, then grow loud enough to break something you thought was unbreakable. The first crack came the week my dad's overtime pay went missing from his jacket pocket. He thought he'd misplaced it, but when it happened again, the worry in his voice changed. It wasn't confusing anymore. It was suspicious. I remember him saying softly, "Sometimes people you trust don't even mean to hurt you, kid. They just forget what trust costs." At the time, I didn't think much of it. But 2 weeks later, everything made sense. In the worst possible way. Because that was the day I opened Sophie's bag and saw my dad's black leather wallet tucked neatly between her notebooks and lip gloss. The same wallet he'd been searching for all week. The one with his ID still inside. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might throw up. For a second, I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. Then she walked into the locker room, smiling like nothing was wrong. And when she saw what I was holding, her face went white. "Anna," she whispered. I don't know how it got there. Her voice, it was trembling. And in that moment, something in me broke. That's where this story starts. With a wallet, a lie, and a friendship that suddenly didn't feel like home anymore. People say high school friendships don't last forever, but when you're 17, forever feels real. It felt real with Sophie. We met the first week of freshman year at Riverside High School. It was raining hard, that kind of cold New York rain that turns sidewalks into rivers. Everyone had umbrellas except me. I was trying to cover my sketchbook under my jacket when she ran up and said, "Come on, we can share." She was holding a broken umbrella with hearts drawn all over it. Half of it was bent, and it didn't even work that well. But she smiled, and for some reason I followed her anyway. That's how it started. By sophomore year, we were inseparable. If you saw one of us, the other wasn't far behind. We'd hang out after class, split curly fries at the diner across from school, and spend hours wandering Riverside Park, talking about everything. Boys, college, our messed up families, the future. Sophie always had this wild energy about her. She could make anything fun, even studying for midterms. She'd joke, "If we fail chemistry, we'll just start a band." And I'd laugh, even though I couldn't sing to save my life. But behind her jokes, I started noticing little things. Like how she'd flinch when her mom's name popped up on her phone. Or how she never invited me over, even though she'd been to my place 100 times. Her family wasn't rich, but they were better off than us. Her mom worked in real estate, her stepdad in finance. They lived in a rent-stabilized building closer to Lexington Avenue, still middle class, but compared to our tiny apartment, it felt like another world. I never thought much about it, though. Sophie never made me feel less than. If anything, she made me feel seen. My dad loved her, too. He'd always say, "That girl's got fire in her. Don't lose her, kid." Sometimes when I came home late from study sessions with Sophie, He'd leave snacks out for both of us. Cheese crackers, juice boxes, even leftover pizza. He treated her like she was mine to protect. And in a way she was, but then things started to change. It was small at first. Sophie started borrowing things, my hair ties, my markers, my hoodie. She always gave them back, except sometimes. She didn't. I'd tease her about it, and she'd roll her eyes and say, "You're so paranoid, Anna." Then one afternoon, she slipped her hand into my backpack during lunch. When I asked what she was doing, she laughed. "Relax, I just needed gum." I didn't think twice. That's what friends did, right? They shared everything. A month later, I noticed $20 missing from my art supplies jar at home. Dad brushed it off, saying maybe he'd used it for groceries. But I knew he hadn't. He kept his money folded neatly in his wallet, always in the same order. That's how he was, organized to a fault. Then it happened again and again. The tension at home got heavier. Dad's patience wore thin, and I could tell he was starting to wonder if maybe I was the reason. One night, while I was doing homework at the kitchen table, he asked softly, "You sure none of your friends have been here when I wasn't around?" I froze. He didn't mean it like an accusation. He was just trying to make sense of things. But my stomach twisted anyway, because there was only one friend who'd ever been there. Sophie. Still, I defended her. I told him he was wrong, that she'd never do that. She wasn't that kind of person. And maybe I believed it. Or maybe I just needed to. Because Sophie wasn't just my best friend. She was my person. The one constant in a life that already felt too unstable. But looking back now, I think that's when I started noticing how often she changed the subject whenever I mentioned money. How she'd suddenly forget her wallet when we went out. How she'd laugh it off like it was no big deal. I didn't know it yet, but every small red flag was leading straight to that day at school. The day I unzipped her bag and found the one thing that could shatter everything I thought I knew about her. By late spring, everything in my life started feeling slightly off. You know that weird feeling when you can't point to what's wrong, but you just know something's not right? That was me. Every day. Dad was quieter. Sophie was different. And I was stuck in the middle, pretending everything was normal when it wasn't. The first real sign came one Friday afternoon. Dad came home from his shift early, looking drained. He tossed his jacket over the chair and sighed. "I can't find my wallet," he said, patting his pockets. I thought I left it in the car, but it's not there. I looked up from my homework. "Maybe it's in your work locker?" He nodded slowly. "Maybe. Just weird, though. I had it last night. I remember paying for gas." He tried to play it off, but I could tell he was worried. That wallet wasn't just any wallet. It was old, leather, scuffed on the corners. It had his ID, his overtime cash, a picture of me from middle school that he kept behind a plastic sleeve. It wasn't just money. It was years of his life folded in half and carried everywhere. He said he'd check again in the morning. But that night, I noticed him double-checking every surface in the apartment, under the couch, the kitchen counter, even the laundry basket. When he finally gave up, he muttered, "Guess I'll have to cancel the cards." Then he added, almost to himself, "These things don't just vanish." Something about the way he said it made my chest tighten. At school the next week, Sophie was weird. She avoided eye contact, kept her phone face down, and seemed jumpy. Whenever I mentioned my dad, she'd change the subject. When I said, "He lost his wallet," she froze for a second before forcing a laugh. "That sucks," she said quickly. "Maybe he dropped it on the subway or something." The way her voice wobbled, just slightly, stuck with me. Still, I brushed it off. Because she was Sophie. My best friend. The person who'd held me when I cried about my parents splitting, who'd slept over after every bad day. She couldn't be lying to me, right? That weekend, I went to her place for the first time in months. It wasn't fancy. 2-bedroom apartment on East 91st, the kind with narrow hallways and posters covering the cracks in the walls. Her stepdad wasn't home, and her mom barely looked up from her laptop. We ordered Chinese, watched old movies, and for a while, it felt like things were back to normal. Until she went to the bathroom. That's when I noticed her bag, her big canvas tote she took everywhere. It was sitting open on the floor by the couch. Inside, I saw a familiar corner of brown leather sticking out beneath her notebooks. At first, I didn't move. I just stared at it. It couldn't be. It couldn't. But my hands moved before my brain could stop them. I reached in and pulled it out. It was Dad's wallet. The scratches on the edge, the little tear near the zipper. I knew it by heart. My fingers went numb as I flipped it open. His ID was still there. His photo. His folded cash, all of it. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear the TV anymore. Just then, Sophie came out of the bathroom, drying her hands on her jeans. She froze when she saw what I was holding. Anna. Her voice cracked. I don't know how it got there. I remember just staring at her. Her eyes were wide like a cornered animal. Her hands shook as she reached out, then stopped halfway. Please, you have to believe me, she said. I didn't take it. I swear. But all I could hear was my dad's voice in my head. Sometimes people you trust don't even mean to hurt you. They just forget what trust costs. And standing there in that tiny living room, I realized maybe he'd been right all along. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just put the wallet down on the table, grabbed my bag, and walked out. The city outside felt colder than usual. The sounds of traffic and laughter from the street below felt far away, like I was underwater. That was the moment I knew something between us had just broken for good. Sophie texted me that night, over and over. Please, Anna, I swear I didn't take it. Can we talk? Please, I didn't reply. My dad had already found his replacement cards. But when I saw his old wallet sitting on the counter, I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth, that I'd found it in the hands of the person I trusted most. By Monday, Sophie cornered me before class. Her eyes were swollen like she hadn't slept in days. Anna, please, just let me explain. I crossed my arms cold and steady. Go ahead, she swallowed hard. It wasn't me. I didn't steal it. I swear to God. Then how did my dad's wallet end up in your bag? Her lip trembled. Because your dad gave it to me. I froze. What are you talking about? She looked around, lowered her voice. He came to school on Thursday. He saw me outside the art room. He said he dropped it near your building and asked me to keep it safe for you. I didn't even open it. I put it in my bag and forgot until you came over. It sounded crazy, but her face, she wasn't lying. Her voice shook like someone telling the truth for the first time. Still, it didn't add up. Why wouldn't he just tell me? She hesitated, then whispered. Because he wanted to see if you'd noticed something missing. He said you'd been distracted lately, that you'd been staying out late, not helping much at home. He said maybe this would make you more careful. My stomach turned. That sounded exactly like something my dad would say. Not out of cruelty, but frustration. Still, I needed proof. That night after dinner, I asked him, Did you give your wallet to Sophie? He blinked, caught off guard. How'd you know that? The room went silent. I waited for him to go on. He sighed. Yeah, I dropped it outside the school when I was dropping off those catering trays. Sophie saw me looking around and helped. I told her to hand it to you since I was running late. Guess she forgot. My throat went dry. Forgot. That one word carried more guilt than 1,000 excuses. He rubbed his temples. Did you find it? I nodded slowly. He smiled in relief. Good. I was starting to feel crazy. But I didn't smile back. Because now I felt like I was the one who'd done something wrong. The next morning, I waited for Sophie outside Riverside Park. When she saw me, she looked scared. I talked to my dad, I said quietly. You were telling the truth. Her shoulders dropped, and for the first time in days, she let out a shaky laugh. I told you, she said softly. I'd never steal from you, Anna. I nodded. I know, but my voice didn't sound like mine. Because even if she hadn't stolen anything, something had still been taken. Trust doesn't disappear with a lie. It disappears with a doubt. We still walked to school together that morning, but something between us had changed, like the kind of silence that doesn't mean peace anymore. Just distance. That's how friendships sometimes end. Not with a fight, not with betrayal, but with a crack that never really seals again. If you've ever lost trust in someone you loved or tried to rebuild it, tell me what you did. And if you want more stories that make you feel, please subscribe, because sometimes the quietest betrayals are the ones that stay the longest.